Hello everyone. It's about 9:30 a.m. Friday, March the 18th, 2016, and this is DelrayVAWeather.com. Okay, this update isn't going to talk about our snowstorm tomorrow. It's actually going to talk about the prospects for hurricanes this year. The hurricane season runs from June the 1st through November the 30th, and there's some thought that the state of the what's called the ENSO, the La Nina, El Nino aspect of the equatorial Pacific has an effect on the total number of hurricanes during the hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin. And so I want to go through some of the things I've been looking at and give you an assessment of what we can expect this season. Okay, well, what's up on the screen is actually a graphic taken from a paper published back in October 1999 in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. Pike and Lancy were the authors. And what they did is they looked at the total amount of normalized hurricane damage in the U.S. And broke it into whether it was a La Nina hurricane season, a neutral hurricane season, or an El Nino hurricane season. And as you can see up on the screen, there is a significantly higher amount of damage for most years. It's actually 3 exceptions out of 73 years. But generally, there's more hurricane damage in the United States in neutral or La Nina years compared to El Nino years. Okay, this graph actually is a normalized to 1997 dollars, and I did a little bit of calculation, and so what I'm going to be talking about now is actually normalized in 2015 dollars. Okay, the principal reason why there is appears to be a difference, substantially less hurricanes in El Nino seasons compared to neutral and La Nina, has to do with the shear that is created when we're in an El Nino season. And this is a graph taken from the National Climate Prediction Center website, and it shows that here on the left-hand side, this is El Nino, and it shows that we have an extended Pacific jet stream and amplified storm track that runs right through the area of the Gulf Coast and off the Florida East Coast. This results in a high shear. It means that there is a strong wind that's at high altitudes that is going to sort of chop off the tops of thunderstorms. And you really need thunderstorm development for hurricanes to develop. And you saw this last season when we were in an El Nino hurricane season. A lot of hurricanes looked really big, and then they either sort of just decreased when they got close to the East Coast, or they turned sharply out to sea, never even getting close to the East Coast. And this is the reason, this strong southern jet stream. In a La Nina year, however, the Pacific jet moves further north and is much weaker. So over in the area off the Florida East Coast and in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico, you have much less shear at the high altitudes. So you don't get that lopping off of the tops of thunderstorms, and it allows hurricanes to continue to develop as they approach the East Coast and obviously go over the warmer waters of the Gulf Stream. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, when we take a look at the research, the October 1999 research, and update it a little bit, this is what we get. During neutral or La Nina Atlantic hurricane seasons, there's a 32% chance of having U.S. landfall hurricanes that produce more than $3.7 billion of damage, significant damage. And in those types of years, you actually have an 8% chance of having a U.S. landfall hurricanes, and that could be one or multiple hurricanes totaling to this amount, of up to more than 22 billion. In other words, catastrophic type hurricanes. So during this type of hurricane season, neutral La Nina, you really have a reasonable chance of getting catastrophic hurricanes hitting the United States, either in the Gulf of Mexico or on the east coast of the United States. However, in El Nino Atlantic hurricane seasons, there's only a 5% chance of having a U.S. landfall hurricane that produces more than that $3.7 billion damage, and virtually no chance of having these catastrophic hurricanes that produce more than 22 billion in damages. So there's a huge difference between these two. The difference is the result of the high wind shear during El Nino, which suppresses the hurricane development, like I just mentioned. Wind shear is less in neutral and La Nina. Okay, there is other research, and it's not conclusive, but it's interesting. It's actually research done by Mexico's meteorological service, that there's a slight increase in East Coast landfalls during neutral seasons and a slight increase in Gulf Coast landfalls during La Nina seasons. So, that's kind of interesting that is seems to be a slight bias there. Okay, now this is as of the March 14th Climate Prediction Center report on the ENSO, the La Nina, El Nino area in the equatorial Pacific. What they are saying is that we are still in a strong El Nino, but it is weakening. And in fact, the December, January, February 3-month average is still at plus 2.2, which makes it a very strong El Nino still. Okay, they are predicting that by late spring or early summer, we will be in a neutral period, neither El Nino nor La Nina. And my guess is that we'll be in that sort of neutral period sometime between May the 1st and July the 1st, which means at least one month of the 2016 hurricane season will be in a neutral condition. They also are calling for a 50% chance of a La Nina by September 20th, which means there's a 50% chance we will be in a neutral through the early part of the 2016 hurricane season. It also implies that there is a chance that we will remain in a neutral or weak El Nino through at least September the 20th. So there is a chance that we will still be in a weak El Nino in the hurricane period, which would suppress hurricane development. So that's the only caveat in what I'm about to say in the prediction for this hurricane season. If we believe that we are going to go into a either neutral or La Nina state for the 2016 hurricane, then it's likely we'll see more U.S. landfall hurricanes than we have in the last couple of years. It is possible that there'll be more East Coast landfalls in the early part of the season, which is not typical. Typically, early part of the season has a landfall in the Gulf Coast region. But if we are in a neutral condition in the tropical Pacific, then it's quite possible we're going to see some early season Atlantic coast landfall hurricanes. Okay, that also means that if we are end up in a La Nina later in the season. Usually late season hurricanes end up being the East Coast landfall. But if we're in a La Nina later in this season, it's quite possible we will have more than normal Gulf Coast landfalls. So that's basically what we can say now is there's a pretty good chance that we're going to see more hurricanes this season than we have in the past few years, and that there's actually probably a little higher likelihood that we're going to get East Coast landfalls. And of course, generally, East Coast landfalls create the most damage, property damage, because it's just higher populations along the East Coast of the United States compared to the Gulf Coast. Not entirely, but generally. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions, just give me a tweet. It's at Pat Penn, that's Patpend, and I'll try and answer them. Thanks a lot.